Beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other, just as the Lord has forgiven you, so that you also must forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in the one body, and be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. Teach and admonish one another in all wisdom, and with gratitude in your hearts sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs to God. And whatever you do, in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God. You may be seated. Wow. Peace and praise and patience, meekness, kindness, all rolled up into one big ball, isn't it? Well, today we're going to start off with what God expects of us and how we can get through every day. You know, I kind of came to that conclusion that I had to have a lot of meekness, kindness, and consideration, compassion in a lot of times. And I don't always have them. Sometimes I fall short of those things. And yet, this is what he tells us in our scriptures today that we are to have. We are to have those things working within us. So, you know, compassion, number one, is compassion. It's kind of easy to feel compassion for somebody when you know they're going through a struggle and you've been through that struggle yourself, so you can identify with their sources of how that feels. You can truly go up to that person and say, I know how you feel. Now, that person that hasn't ever went through those circumstances may come up and say, I know how you feel, but they really don't know how you feel because they really haven't been there. And sometimes, you know, in that kind of light, we give out the wrong information or we give out the wrong thought process. But God says that we, in his love, we can have compassion for a lot of things. And, you know, today I find that it's very, you know, when they show those commercials of those little children in foreign countries that your mom said, clean your plate up because there's kids that are hungry, and you said, send it to them. And, you know, we can find ourselves having compassion. I can even have compassion when they show abused animals on the commercials, that I have compassion. But sometimes when I walk out here on the street and I see things that I don't think line up, sometimes it's kind of hard for me to have compassion. But yet he says to have compassion, to be caring, to be loving, to be kind. And then he said kindness. Have you ever had to try to be kind to somebody that isn't somebody that you really feel kind to? That one's a real tough one. That one's the hardest kindness I can think of. It's easy for me to be kind to all of you because we're kind of church family, and it's easy to be kind in here. It's easy to say please and thank you, and it's easy to open the door for one another, and it's easy to say, if you need me, I'll be over to help you. But what about this situation that isn't easy? What about that person that you look at and you're like, I don't want to get involved? Been there, done that. So I have to work constantly on these avenues as well. The next one he says to have humility. How to be humble. Today, as I was setting in, I got set in on Sunday school class. Y'all should come to adult Sunday school class, you'll learn something. And I said, you guys, this goes right along with my sermon today, because we learned about having humility and to being humble. And if you have never had anyone do something for you in the time of need, you have never understood that true humility. It is so easy to give. And I love to give. I love to do things for other people, and I shared a story here a while back, about a year ago, when I baked the bread and I took it around to whoever I've seen, and that was fun, and I enjoyed it, and it was very diverse people that I ran into. But sometimes, if you've ever been on that other side of that part of it, you have to become very humble. When somebody comes to you and says, I feel like I should give this to you, or can I help you with that? I've been guilty of saying, no, I don't need that. It's okay. And we talked about that today, and you rob that person of a blessing. And you rob yourself of a blessing. Because when somebody comes to you and they humble themselves to give to you whatever you're in need of, and they do that, and you accept or you receive that, you get a blessing and they get a blessing. And I shared the story of when, before I had kids, or if I had one, it would only have been Tracy, and we didn't have the money to go see Jim's grandmother. But she wasn't feeling very well, and we felt like we should go. So we drove to Chillicothe, Missouri, on really the last bit of money that we had to go. And when we got there and we visited with her, she tried to hand Jim $20. Well, back then, $20 went a long ways. Today, $20 don't go very far, but back then it did. And he wouldn't accept it. And then it came to me when we was on the road, this enlightenment came to me. I said to him, I said, Jim, we robbed your grandmother of a blessing. Because that was a blessing for us, and we really could have used that. And God knew we needed it. God knew that we went. So we should have humbled ourselves and accepted. We never did not accept after that. That was not a thing that happened, and it was a very real thing to us, because we robbed that blessing for her to be feeling that she gave and for us to receive. So sometimes receiving on the receiving end is very humbling, but within that humbling, many times a great blessing comes into play with it. So being humble is very important. Sometimes we're humble in doing things that we maybe normally wouldn't have done. You know, Christmas time's a real easy time to do those extraordinary things. But what about July? What about June, August? Do we still have that spirit of Christmas, that we are willing and open to be humbled to do what God asks us to do? Meekness. Meekness is not weakness. There is a real difference in that. Many people look at, if I'm meek and I'm down there, I'm lowly and I'm weak. Meekness takes a very strong person. Because to be meek, you need to be pretty strong. And meekness does not show a sign of weakness. Meekness shows a sign of strength and love and what God can give us. He says us to have forgiveness. Now, I've told you many times we could do many sermons on forgiveness. There's all types and all angles and all kinds of thoughts on forgiveness. But in this particular scripture, he said to forgive as he forgave. Now, I can take that to Easter, because what happened when he was on that cross is he said, Father, forgive them. See, he gave forgiveness to even the very people that had beat him, that had put the crown of thorns on his head, that had spit in his face, had slapped him, had put the nails in his hands. He forgave them. So he says our part is to forgive as he forgave. Now that's a really tough one sometimes. Because we have all, I think everybody could probably agree with this, at some point in your life, we have been injured by somebody. Somebody's mistreated us. Somebody has not done everything correctly. And I will never forgive them for that. Have you ever heard somebody say that? Ooh, that's real dangerous ground to walk on. Because he says to forgive as I forgave. He didn't say that you would forget. See, people forget in times of forgiveness. They think, oh, it's you forgive and you forget and life goes on and everything's rosy. It doesn't mean that you should walk into the lion's den again. Forgiveness only means it's a breaking the chains of freedom in your heart and in your life. It is forgiveness for you to be free from the Father, for the Father. So that the pathway of love can flow well within you. When you hold that unforgiveness in your heart, that hatred just keeps grinding away and it eats at you. And it's like a cancer. It just doesn't give up. And it just continues to eat away until it starts filtrating into other areas of your life. And you become hard. And you become uncompassionate. And you become unkind. And you become no humility. And you become all of those things that God says, I want you to have. Because unforgiveness locks your heart up. And it wraps chains around it. And then it builds a wall up around it. So that no one can get in. I can remember a time in my life that I thought, I will never get hurt again. No one is going to ever enter that inner sanctum, and I will never be hurt again. There's one problem with that, and it's a big one. Because when I don't let others in with that ability that, oh, you know what, I might get hurt again, I keep out the good things. When I lock in my heart, I lock all the good stuff that's out there out. When I build up that wall so no one can enter that inner sanctum, then I have locked out the fun stuff too. I've locked out the joy, I've locked out the goodness, the kindness. I've locked out the laughter and the fun things that are in life and the things that you enjoy every day because I've locked out the bad. I've locked out that bad stuff. See, you can't filter it through. It doesn't work. Our heart is very special because it doesn't filter like that. So there's going to be some times that when you let those walls down and you take those chains off and you unpadlock those chains and you say, I'm going to forgive regardless. I'm going to forgive. Then God gives us the wisdom to not walk back into a bad situation. He didn't say to lock everyone out. He said, just be wise. I've learned that if I've gotten hurt, I just don't go back in there. I don't go back to that room. I forgive them. I am okay with it. I can see them on the street and be publicly polite. I can go on my way. I'm just not going to be closest friends. We're not going to share the same boat. And so there is a part of forgiveness that there's so many avenues that we need to learn what it's about to forgive. Forgiveness is not letting someone off the hook. Because I've heard people say this. I'm not going to forgive them because I am not letting them have that area of my life. And you know what? Forgiveness doesn't give them any rights to your life. Forgiveness only frees you to be with the Father. Because he says, if you don't forgive others, then I don't forgive you. Simple as that. No problem. So when we forgive in love, and we move on with our lives, and we continue to grow, we no longer have to play ball in their court, and it's the ball is given to them. It's their problem what they do with it. It's their problem. And there's been times and there's been stories, I've heard great things when that's happened, that maybe families have been united, that friendships have been brought back into relationship. And then I have noticed stories that each walked their own way because the other was not going to do that. And that's okay because it's no longer your problem. See, when we learn that forgiveness is not a thing that we have to pick and choose, we're not judging. And the only judge that there is God, and that's when they stand before Him, not you. And when you stand before Him fully, completely, and openly to Him with a forgiving heart, then He can flood you with His love and His joy. Then, when you do those other things, and especially that forgiveness, then you get a peace. It says, I give you peace. Peace comes under the clothing of love. He says to love. And that kind of love is to love your neighbor as yourself. Well, it means to don't harm them. Don't go out and do something purposely for them. Sometimes you have that special neighbor that you think, I really don't know what to do with this. Let God do it. Just pray for him. That's all we're required to do. And so when we do that, and we are clothed with the love of God, and we have compassion, we have humility, we have kindness, we have meekness, and we have forgiveness, we have peace. And if you notice out of that list, that is the last one that is in there is peace. Because peace comes when we can take care of all those other rooms in our heart. When we can clean them out one by one. And sometimes we get one cleaned out, another gets cluttered up. I've had that happen, and I'm like, man, I didn't see that coming. So we have to re-clean sometimes. We have to reorganize. We have to get back on track. See, to love, to be loved, you have to know how to love. And to know how to love, you have to love. Because that's a two-way street. Love does not come in just one direction. God says, you love me, I love you. I love you, you love me. He's always there. And he's always on time. This week, God and I had a little conversation. Well, we had many of them, but this particular one, I says, God, you know what? I ain't worrying about any of that stuff no more. You know, it's in your hands, and whatever happens, happens. And you have the right time, even though I